you are doing well. And this is my May wrap up. I was trying to first of all talk about two books that I finished like near enough just before May. And the first is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. I gave it 4.25 stars. Okay, this was the first book I had read in years since like Of Mice and Men in year 10. I really enjoyed it. And it was definitely like made me want to read more after I finished it. And it follows our protagonist, Arthur Less, who is a nearing 50-year-old failed novelist, basically, and he gets an invitation to his ex-boyfriend's wedding, but he doesn't really want to go. So he accepts like a whole array of like half-baked literary invitations from like New York City to Berlin, South America to like East Asia, and many more in between. And we just like follow this like disillusioned like American abroad, basically. And he thinks back on his like lives and like friendships, relationship, romances of like the past and present time. Events did feel slightly repetitive and unrealistic, but I feel like Greer uses his language in like a good way to like evoke emotions and thoughts and feelings and relatable aspects. So I did really enjoy this. 4.25 stars from me. The next book I read was Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I really love this. I basically follow two like 21-year-old college like university students, our protagonist Frances and her best friend slash ex-girlfriend Bobby, and they do like poetry readings together, and then they become friends with like a 30-year-old married couple called Melissa and Nick. Frances and Nick like grow closer and actually start an affair, so spicy. And I thought like, okay, it's a bit unrealistic in parts, but Rooney's like character analysis and plot line really made me like read on, and I just like basically ate this up. I loved it. But oh my god, this irked me so much. This woman doesn't use speech marks. Why? And then we have to have a whole array of I said, she said, he said, blah 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 blah. I'm like, hun, why? Why do you do this to me? So some of the characters are problematic in their own ways, but I quite like that in a way, because then you don't just root for one over the other and you all want them to have like good things happen to them, and like you basically root for them all. And yeah, many themes are talked about in it, like LGBT representation, power dynamics, affairs. And this is not a spoiler, but the ending really did irritate me a lot. I was just like, hun, why leave me like that? Next one I read was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, and I gave that 4.25 stars. I don't currently have it because I've given it to my friend to read. This book did something to me. Literally, I was obsessed and enthralled by it. Like, I just kept like on reading on, and I literally got through like 30, 40, 50 pages in like literally what seemed like 10. Plotline is kind of dull, if I'm being completely honest. It basically follows our protagonist. I'll get onto her in a second. And all she does is like go to the bodega, which I don't actually know what that is. I think it's like a corner shop. She gets coffee, she takes sleeping pills, she sleeps, she sometimes sees her friend Reva, and her psychiatrist Dr. Tuttle, but I always read it aloud as Dr. Turtle, who is unhinged. No, not that much happens. She does like think back on her past and like experiences and memories and events. Yeah, and it is a very character-based novel. It's not like plot really, in my opinion, and these are good when the characters are lovable, but this woman, I despised her with a passion. She was an outright bitch. Basically, all the other characters I kind of hated. Literally all of them, especially Ping Shi and Trevor. God, you make my blood boil. Literally, the only person I didn't hate was Reva's mum, and all she did was die. So, if that didn't tell you something, I don't know what will. Quite a few trigger warnings because of the things these characters do and say. So, you should look into that. This is not a proper spoiler, but with hindsight, I did kind of hate Reva less as it went on, and I did cry at the end. So, yeah. And also, I don't really like, it's not explicit the reasons for the main character to want to like sleep for a year. In my like how I viewed it, like I do sense a void, but I'm not exactly sure if it is like depression or what. That being very, very problematic. I did really enjoy this book. I just kept reading on and on and on. So another 4.25 stars from moi. The next book I read was
Joe Lycett's Parsnips Buttered, Bamboozle and Boycott, and Bamboozle and Boycott, Modern Life, One Email at a Time. That's not what the title is on Goodreads. The title is How to Baffle, Bamboozle and Boycott Your Way Through Modern Life.
But whatever. And I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. It's like a semi-memoir, semi-self-help book, but with no actual useful advice. And I literally just ate it up. I could have read it all in one go, to be honest. And I have watched some of like Joe Lycett's like stand-up things before, and it is like very similar to that, but I kind of like this more because you have like pictures and like illustrations, and it's just like it's very easy to get through, and it's just great, and the humor is like witty, like relevant, unexpected in parts, but I loved it. A great little funny book, easy to get through, and I'm definitely going to go back for this for a little pick-me-up when I need it. Next book is also on loan to my friend. Book is Two Boys Kissing by David Leviathan, and this is another 5 stars from me. I do want to give a little trigger warning because I'm going to speak a lot about this because it's my favourite book and I need you to read it, but there is mentions of homophobia, assault, hate crime, mental health, suicide, AIDS and more, but I definitely feel it is an essential read in my opinion. Yeah, it's just such an amazing book, and it's literally like 240 pages, and it doesn't need any more, it doesn't need any less. It's perfect. It flows so amazingly. Like I could have read the whole thing in one sitting, but I had to take breaks because it broke me. I have never cried this much at a book, like ever, and it will probably take a lot more to overcome that in the future. What the actual book is about 8 main queer characters, and we follow their lives over the course of 3 days, and they have overlapping but distinct storylines. The first are Harry and Craig, who are ex-boyfriends, and they are planning to have the world's longest kiss outside of their school like grounds. And there are many reasons for this, but the main trigger one was as a pseudo revenge for the next character, Tarek, who was assaulted. He is gay as well, and just to like show like two boys kissing in the limelight, like all like news coverage and stuff. And then the next characters are Avery, who is transgender as well, and Ryan, who met the night before at a gay prom. And then it follows them on like these like 2 dates, and like they're just like kind of like getting to know each other, knowing themselves, sharing things, and it's like falling in love. It was beautiful. And then we also have Peter and Neil, who are another couple in their like first year of their relationship, and we basically just like follow like them and things that they go through, and a very special emotional event in Neil's life. I bawled so much when that part happened. And then finally is Cooper, who is, for lack of a better word, a loner. And he is taken to like gay sex and dating apps for like communications. And then he is outed to his parents, and then he kind of like runs away. And we just follow him like on his like journey. A lot more goes on. I don't want to like spoil it, or I'm just giving you the core plot lines basically. And then on top of these characters, we also have the narrator, who is a character in themselves, and they are meant to represent like the gay like men of the past. And it is just so good. And they like show like insights and like information and like anecdotes, and it's just
Chef's kiss, beautiful, loved it. Let me see, I'm looking at my notes by the way because I have a lot to say.
There is these cute heartwarming elements, but I could literally be like grinning ear to ear like 1 second, and then like 2 sentences over I'm like basically on the verge of tears, and then like the next sentence I'm like in a pool of my own tears. All my tears were sad. There were like a lot, but not all of them. It was mostly like just a mixture of like happiness, hope, dread, fear, regret, sadness, and many more. And yeah, so a book that just like has this such emotiveness is just such a like marvel to behold. It's just amazing. And yeah, so read it. And now my reasons. So if you're gay, I feel like, or queer, there is many relatable elements. But if you're not, then I hope you'll be able to understand better the lives and experiences of gay/queer people, and the impact of like hurtful words and actions. The quotes in this book, I had to have my phone constantly with me to write down all these quotes because they were just incredible. 5 stars from me. Thank you. Next book I read was Monogamy by Adam Phillips, and I gave this 3 stars. I got this for my friend. It wasn't really for me. I just thought I'd read it first. And it's basically a collection of 121 aphorisms. They vary in length, discussion, meaning, stance and nuance, but all basically state a fact on this idea of monogamy. For most of them I did take like an impartial approach, just because it wasn't something I was necessarily that interested in, but there are some I did like definitely like agree with or disagree, and some that really stuck with me. I was kind of left basically with more questions than answers, but I don't think Phillips actually wanted to answer the question of basically is monogamy good or bad, because so I gave it to my friend. I basically gave it 3 stars
Because it was just informative but not like, I won't go back to it. Yeah.
Next book I read was this tiny little one, George's Marvelous Medicine by Roald Dahl. I gave this 4.25 stars, and this was and still is, to my knowledge, my favourite Roald Dahl book. So you basically follow a boy called George, and he concocts a medicine to give to his horrible grandma with all manner of things that he finds in his home, and then things happen, but I won't tell you anymore because like it's tiny and I don't want to spoil it. Yeah, so I really enjoyed rereading this. It was just like a little like childhood nostalgic moment, and yeah, and you're never too old to read a children's book. Next book I read was extremely different. This was Lucky by Alice Sebold. I personally gave this 3.5 stars. Like reading this memoir, it is very difficult to actually review it as well. So you basically follow the story of 18-year-old Alice, who is a university student, and she is brutally raped and beaten in a park near her dormitory. And then we just follow her like the subsequent effects on her life, relationships, family, and quest for justice. From the get-go, it's a very vivid and graphic retelling of the assault, and this is like continued throughout, but I do appreciate her matter of fact and telling it like it is approach to writing. Despite being a hard read, I definitely feel it is important to understand and to tell her story, because like everyone that goes through these things, like, their story should be shared and listened to and understood and respected, because so many times they don't, which is disgusting. And there is elements in this book that, like, still remain true today, like how she says that she was, like, young, white, a virgin, and the fact that she was clearly beaten, and that she was wearing like unprovocative clothing, and how all these things somehow matter in the courtroom, but they don't. Well, they shouldn't, but for some reason they still do. And this happened to her in the 80s. It was written in 1999, and they still remain true today in 2022, which is utterly disgusting. But anyway, back to the book. From a literary perspective, it's a good book. I personally feel if it was a fiction, it should have ended after the trial. It would have probably been a 5-star book for me, because you have just been through this trial with her, and although being 18, she handled it so professional, and then she's starting to get her life back on track, and it shows that justice has prevailed. Events after and in the aftermath, which I personally feel was really glossed over and they should have been explained more, are horrific, but it's what happened. So, and it's a memoir, it's not fiction, so I can't really judge it as fiction because it's not. However, I cannot talk about this memoir without addressing the fact that the man that was accused, trialed and jailed for 16 years for her rape and assault, was in fact innocent. I feel like I can't comprehend this book without having that in mind, because it has been such a long time now. Yeah, so lots of reviewers just being really horrible to Alice for basically getting this man put in jail for 16 years of his life. And I'm not trying to downplay the fact that this was really, like, unjust, and it has severely affected him, like his life. He's literally lost 16 years of his life, and his, like, relationships and, like, things like with employment and, like, so many things it will affect in the future. However, she clearly had PTSD from the event, and I think that she wasn't just accusing someone for the sake of it. She clearly did have like mental health problems following the attack. So yeah, so I gave this 3.5 stars because I have to comprehend everything, basically. Next book I read is this tiny little dinky thing, The Magic Finger by Roald Dahl again, and I gave this 4 stars. I wanted a little pick-me-up after reading Lucky, and it basically follows the story of a girl who has a magic finger, and she uses it on her neighbours who are hunters, and it basically turns them into ducks. And I won't say any more because, like, it's tiny, I don't want to spoil anything. Basically about the sort of, like, brutality of hunting in a way, and, like, that, like, sort of, like, seeing something from animals' perspective. It bring back some nostalgia for me, so yeah, 4-star read from me. The next book I read, my baby, Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, Volume 1. Oh my god, I love this book. This is 5 stars. 5 stars from me. Sadly, I came to the books after watching the show. I did want to read them first, but,
like, just TikTok and everything pressurised me into watching the show first. It's not my fault. It's not my fault it's not my fault I'm susceptible to peer pressure now, is it? Jokes aside.
The Netflix adaptation was amazing. It's beautiful. It is incredible. I love it so much. Oh, just, like, lovely, innocent, heartwarming, and wrenching sometimes, emotional. It's perfect. I loved it. See, just following 2 boys fall in love. Like, is there anything cuter than that? No, there's not. This basically covers content in the show up until the cliffhanger at the party. We follow two boys, Charlie Spring, who is gay, and Nick Nelson, who is not gay. That's all I'll say at the moment. And basically, they kind of just a friendship or more, wink wink, starts to blossom between them when they're made to sit next to each other in a form room. It is a graphic novel, so like, yeah, so you can like just easily get through it. I wanted to like savor it and just like look at all like just like the pictures and just like really like study them in a way, and like just the facial expressions and everything is just beautiful. There's more I know I want to kind of add about the show because I haven't read all the books yet. As a 22-year-old gay man, watching the show and reading these is slightly bittersweet because I love them, but I just feel like a bit like jealousy towards younger generations that have them because I didn't, and I missed out on so many opportunities and experiences due to like internalized homophobia, little or like usually negative representation, and just like wanting to like suppress that part of me. So yeah, but at the end of the day, why be bitter? You know, there's nothing I can change by now, and I so hope the younger generation will gain access to these sort of things and understand that they are valid and loved and not to feel othered in a sense. And yeah, so thank you, Alice Oseman. You're going to save lives with this series. Next book I read was The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and it is translated by Deborah Smith, and I gave this 4.5 stars. It is currently on loan to my friend at the moment. So it is definitely, as described on the blurb, both terrifying and terrific, and a haunting hypnotic read. I personally loved it, but I was kind of disgusted in a way sometimes. It's an experience, to say the least. Like, it is something. It's split into 3 sections. The first is like from the main character Young-hee's husband, was how like their relationship and how Young-hee has like these dreams, which I did kind of want to like learn more about, and then her subsequent choice to become a vegetarian, the aftermath, and like how the family reacts. Chapter 2 is from Young-hee's brother-in-law, who, and like sort of like his relationship with her sister In-hee, and how like his art predominantly, and how he has a desire to paint Young-hee because of the fact that she has a Mongolian mark, which is a birthmark, to those who don't know. How he wants to have sex with her, yeah. And then part 3 is from In-hee, which is Young-hee's sister's point of view, and it's sort of like about her like relationship with her husband, and with her sister, and like thinking like back, and also like how Young-hee is like wants to become a tree. Yeah, I said that right. A very graphic novel, and it's sort of depraved in parts, but also amazing. I loved it, to be honest. Not to like really say too much without like giving away spoilers, but I would just definitely recommend this book. Very captivating, emotive, and impactful, and yep, 4.5 stars from me. Next book I read, Normal People by Sally Rooney. Incredible. 5 stars. 5 stars from me. I could not put this down. I basically follow 2 characters, Marianne and Connell, from their last year of school until like university. I just wanted to basically go inside and just slap these 2 characters and just talk to each other, you know, just be together, because you both want it, just be together, please. I enjoyed conversations with friends. My friend said that I might not actually like this because apparently some people don't like them both, but I'm happy she said that because my expectations were like blown away. And yeah, The main characters are flawed, but they are definitely lovable, unlike Conversations. And you just want what's best for them. Hint, hint. It's for them to be together.
But sometimes they won't listen.
Many like important topics discussed in Normal People, like especially classism. Rooney took a very like refreshing approach, in my opinion, in how the way the two main characters experiences of like male and female was kind of swapped in a way. Like Connell is shown to like experience like issues with like his mental health, toxic masculinity, like male suicide, adult minor relationships, like sexual assault on men. And then on the other hand, Marianne, like the sexual elements of the book are primarily for her enjoyment in a way. Like there are nuances and they both do, like it is all mixed up, but I feel like there's kind of like it's a refreshing approach, in my opinion. Very easy and accessible read, and I feel like it's very relatable, especially to like people that are in their like early 20s. Now is just so damn cute. Oh my god, I just loved him. Like he was problematic, yes, but he's just so lovely. I just love him so much. I just want him. Like I want him. Also Lorraine, icon. Marianne's family, I hate you, but whatever. So yeah, so I won't go on anymore because I could literally just talk forever about this book. So 5 stars from me, totally recommend. Read it. The next book I read was The Fruit of My Woman by Han Kang, translated by Deborah Smith, and it was an experience like The Vegetarian was, and the two share some like themes, but this one is a lot more pleasant to read, I guess, more like light-hearted. We basically followed like a couple within 8 chapters, all but the 7th are from the husband's perspective, about basically a woman who becomes a plant. Once again, Kang like just fills the pages with like really like vivid depictions, and like the continuous reference to like nature and plant life is just so like beautifully written. My favorite part was probably the 7th chapter, which is from the woman's perspective, and it's like a sort of like a letter to her mother in a sense. And yeah, it was just great. Short and sweet, weird and wonderful, mind-blowing and magnifying. 4.5 stars from me. Loved it. And then the next book I read was Heartstopper Volume 2. And this basically covers content in the show from the party scene up to the beach scene, if you've watched the show. But it mainly deals with Nick coming to terms with his bisexuality and the full-blown like love that's blossoming between him and Charlie. And like the first volume, it doesn't fully match up with the show. Like there is like difference in like the flow and characters and events and things, but it was still just amazing. So much cuteness in this book. Oh, and like the drawings and like the facial expressions, like look at Nick's little dog socks. Look at his little dog socks.
Oh my god, the facial expression and everything.
This also has the iconic, like honestly, I'm having a proper full-on gay crisis scene, which is just chef's kiss amazing. This one is really good at addressing like the concept of like figuring out who you are, who you like, and the fact that it is okay if you're not ready or you don't know. And yeah, and whilst his experience is relatively good, it isn't for everybody. But as Osman says at the end, I promise that one day you will find someone who loves you just the way you are. And yeah, another 5-star read from me. Lovely. An ultimate book I read in May was The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. From the get-go, we are bombarded with the brutal and harrowing plotline that The Lovely Bones is, which is following a 14-year-old girl who is in heaven, who is watching over her family and friends after being kidnapped, raped and murdered by a neighbour. And the graphic retelling is told and alluded to throughout the whole book, so just trigger warnings again. But the key theme is like grief and how we can move on with the loss of a loved one. It's rather slow paced and character focused, with little actually happening, but like we focus more on like the emotions and interactions of the characters through like their kind of like lives. But like for example, like so her sister Lindsay has like this like lot more responsibility placed on her, also like to look after like her family and her brother and things, and she has like this sense of like a Susie shadow, she calls it, and this is also alluded to in like the father's perspective of how like she kind of like needs to like be a replacement for her dead sister. Very vivid, and it does portray very like realistic characters and themes, despite the POV being from a girl in like heaven. And there is some supernatural elements. I personally didn't like these, which I felt quite unexpected and unnecessary, but I don't feel they really took away from the book that much. I don't really know what I took from this. It was difficult to read, but due to like the graphicness, but it is written very well, and there is flawed but lovable characters, and they do develop over time. I gave this 4 stars, by the way. Yeah. The final book I read was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I gave this 4.5 stars. Title is a massive spoiler in the fact that they both do in fact die at the end, and death is a reoccurring theme throughout. I would say it's more about life. From the get-go, I was kind of unimpressed because there's a lot of hype around this book on like BookTube, BookTok, like in bookstores, and so I was like, oh, this is gonna be wow, but no. At first, no. Also, the characters I didn't really jam with. I just felt like some of the idiolect was sort of like forced and unrealistic, and also like the whole like theme is kind of unrealistic. But as it went on, I began to fall in love with the characters. I love them so much. They're just such lovely people. You follow 2 boys, Matteo and Rufus, who get like an alert saying that they're going to die within the next 24 hours. Matteo is kind of a loner in a way. His mum died, his dad is in a coma, he does have a best friend and a goddaughter, but other than that, he kind of like spends most of his life in fear of what other people think about him.
Who does that remind me of? Me. Yeah.
And then Rufus has his funeral, like whilst he's still alive, sabotaged with his like found family at a foster home after his own parents had died and his sister died. So they are both kind of like alone, and then they download this Last Friend app, which is basically like a more depressing, for me anyway, version of Bumble BFF. And they decide to like be each other's last friend for the day and meet up. I'm not going to say any more because I don't really want to spoil it, but they basically just do like a lot of things together, and like a really nice friendship or more, that's what I'm going to say, develops between the 2 of them. It's slightly bittersweet because honestly, like, there's such a nice friendship is brewing, but then we also know that they're going to die. Too prominent on the train scene where they're both like saying like, oh, that's where I did so and so, that's where I got, you know, like they're basically making up past, present and future whilst they're like going on. Also the fact that Rufus like documents his like day on Instagram in full color as opposed to like his normal like monotone black and white, and I feel like this is sort of like a semi metaphor in a way for like bringing the life and color back to his like outlook. There's also some chapters which are short from the peripheral characters, and I did kind of find this like underdeveloped and a little bit unnecessary, but it didn't like really negate from my opinions of the book. I also do have a soft spot for queer characters, and I don't want to like spoil anything, but the queer elements in this book are phenomenal. I love them. They're just so beautiful and innocent. It's just lovely. So my final takes that I took from this book is to just go out and live your life, you know. We've only been given one, so why were we going to waste it, you know? And just to stop thinking about the irrelevant opinions or whatever of like random people on the street that we're never going to come across again, because at the end of the day, it's us who suffer from not doing things out of fear of what other people will think. So yeah, I don't know. There is negative things in the book, and it does deal with death and grief, but like threading its way throughout is like this notion of life and just living. And yeah, I loved it. So I'm gonna stop preaching now. Read it if you want, don't if you don't. That was the end of my May reading wrap up, and I hope to read more in June, so stay tuned. Bye.